I started doing sport when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I stopped walking when I was 7. I became paralysed, and my parents thought it would be good for me to do sport so that I was physically strong, because when I became a wheelchair user, the UK wasn't very wheelchair accessible. There were lots of stairs. It was very hard to get around, and my parents thought that that was something that was very important, was to be physically strong. Also, I was a really annoying child. I was very competitive. I'd have a competition with anybody over anything. It was only when I got to being 12 or 13 years old that I realised that I was good at sport and that I could make a junior British team or a senior British team. And I think it was just amazing that my parents were so encouraging, because there were lots of sports I wasn't very good at, but I found athletics, which I was good at. And my parents just encouraged me to be the best I can. They taught me to train really hard, and they encouraged me just to have a goal and a dream. And for me, that meant that I competed for Great Britain for 22 years. My parents brought me up to believe that if you get something out of life, that you should give something back. And I think that came through my coaches as well, that if you're successful, then you have a responsibility to help other people. So that was something that was just always there. My very first coach was very strong on this as well, that you know, if we went to a competition, we weren't allowed to leave. We weren't allowed to get on the bus to go back home until we'd thanked all the officials that had been there, because all the officials in athletics in the UK are volunteers. So it's just sort of been in. I don't remember a point when it wasn't part of everything that I did. My main challenge would be to promote the rights of disabled people. I think I tried to do that as an athlete on a small scale, in terms of fighting for the rights of disabled athletes to be treated the same as non-disabled athletes. And whether that was within my sport of athletics or within the UK in terms of funding and sponsorship and media coverage, that was something that was very important to me when I was competing. And then when I retired and became a member of the House of Lords, it gave me a different opportunity to think about what we can do for disabled people. Because the reality in the United Kingdom is that if you're disabled, it's much harder to get into a good school, it's much harder to get a job, it's much harder to get a house. Everything is harder. You know, access is still not as good as it can be. I've been on several project visits with the Sport for Good Foundation, and it was supporting disabled children through sport and in their school. In many countries around the world, disabled children are really excluded from society. A lot of families think it's embarrassing to have a disabled child, so don't want to have a disabled child in their family at all. So a lot of these children are abandoned. And the school that we went to visit looks after the children live there. For them, sport is used to help them to be fit enough and strong enough to be able to live lives, you know, live full lives. When I was younger, there was a lot of discrimination against disabled people being involved in sport, and that made me much stronger. It means that now when I visit other countries that are going through things now that maybe we went through in the UK 30 years ago, it gives me hope that we can change those things, that actually if we use sport and we encourage people not just to be development athletes but to be elite athletes to compete for their country, it has the ability to open people's minds and to think that just because you're disabled, you know, it doesn't stop you doing anything. It doesn't stop you working or paying taxes or being a teacher or being in sport. It's important to me to actually get people to understand enough about disability. It's not something to be ashamed of, it's just reality. And actually, disabled people can contribute a lot back to society if we give them a chance. My life's changed in so many different ways because of sport. I'm now a Baroness. I sit in the House of Lords, which is our upper chamber in Parliament, and I'm part of the legislative process. So nobody ever would have imagined that, you know, when I was 7 years old, that I would end up as Baroness Grey-Thompson in the House of Lords. But it's sport that gave me the opportunity to do that. My message for disabled people would be to keep fighting. Don't give up. If you're disabled, you should have exactly the same rights and opportunities to do sport or not to do sport, or to be an artist or to be a teacher or to be anything you want. And just because you're disabled, it shouldn't stop you doing anything. These days it's not so much about access, but it's about changing people's minds. And if you can open people's minds to look at the positive in everything that we can do, then the world will be a better place.